Chapter 1. Disillusionment, work, liberty, and equality are responsible for the shift from liberalism to nationalism. It is hard not to notice the paradigm shift in today's global politics as technology and globalization continue to stretch the very fabric of liberalism. After the collapse of the fascist Nazi-led Germany, liberalism rose from the ashes of the Second World War in the 1940s as one of the two most viable models of governance, with the second, communism, unable to stand the test of time. It is safe to say that the sole surviving model is on the brink of collapse, just decades after it edged out communism. More than ever, human rights, the free market, and democracy, which have embodied liberalism in this era, are not as potent as before. For one, the advent of disruptive technologies like artificial intelligence, AI, big data, blockchain, and cryptocurrency are threats to its survival as governments are increasingly finding it hard to catch up with the explosion of information technology and biotechnology. Secondly, the economic growth that punctuates liberalism has resulted in ecological collapse, and the global warming crisis conversation continues to deteriorate. What makes this development more shocking is that liberalism has no viable alternatives. Also, the backpedaling of economics that had once championed the free will movement has not helped matters. We see this in America's newfound isolationism mantra, and the hasty Brexit campaign of the British. However, note that this does not mean that the Western world is denouncing the fundamentals of liberalism altogether. Instead, they want to practice it within their borders and sideline globalization. You must understand that questions you cannot answer are usually far better for you than answers you cannot question. Such is the blistering pace of today's disruptive technologies that it is plausible that many would lose their jobs to machines soon. While this is a given, it is inevitable that just like the effect of automation in previous industrial revolutions, this AI era will also create new jobs. Hence, humans and machines might work hand in hand. For this to happen, human beings must continuously reinvent themselves to keep up with robots' cognitive capacity. And those who are not capable of acquiring new skills will become irrelevant whenever their jobs become automated. Chapter 2. As we continue to delegate more jobs that rely on cognitive reasoning to machines, they will understand us more than we know ourselves. As people continue to delegate more jobs that rely on cognitive reasoning to artificial intelligence, humanity will naturally trust their judgments. As such, machines might use the information at their disposal to manipulate humans and make decisions for us. This assertion's plausibility has brought to the force the role of ethics in the buzzing AI and machine learning space. Skeptics argue that AI poses a problem since they have no conscience and decide based on written algorithms and not ethics. Nonetheless, these people fail to realize that these machines run based on programmed codes and can only go wrong if the codes are wrong. AI will not deviate from the rules embedded in its codes. Therefore, machines will ignore ethics only if their creators fail to include them in the source codes. In other words, we cannot completely separate AI's actions from the human factor. It is evident that the elites of this era will be no different than those who control data. Already, the largest corporations are data peddlers, and they do not mind offering customers free products for a piece of their data. Although the public is becoming aware of this arrangement, it is unclear how to create the right policies to help people regain control of their data. In reality, people would rather sacrifice their privacy than get shut out of the service market. Did you know? According to a global poll conducted by Gallup, an organization that tracks work ethics, nearly 85% of people are unhappy with their jobs. Chapter 3. Communism, Civilization, and Nationality are political challenges of the 21st century. After the US election in 2016, Mark Zuckerberg proclaimed that Facebook would do all it could to improve the dwindling communal relationship of the 21st century. While this was a much-needed commitment, it is not clear how a corporation would lead a revolution, even if it meant sacrificing its revenue. Regardless of who is commandeering this social networking revolution, humanity must learn to separate the online world from the offline world. Although social networks have bridged the hurdles of globalization, it has crippled the communal bond that once defined humanity. We know more about our friends on social media thousands of miles away, while our next-door neighbor is a stranger. The deterioration of offline relationships is slowly killing our cognitive performances, as we find it difficult to live without factoring in the validation of the online world. As expected, Facebook would look to use AI to get more people into meaningful communities, which might not help, unless the technology encourages people to become aware of the real world. However, this does not take anything away from the benefits of globalization. In today's world, borders are fading, and there's a coming together of political ideologies resulting in the establishment of one civilization. Chapter 4. Globalization will not necessarily result in the clash of civilizations. It will only facilitate a faster growth that will alienate those who aren't tech-savvy. Globalization won't phase out manual labor or cause conflict between civilizations. Instead, the world will form a singular civilization where different labor models will be brought together and made relevant. Unlike the pre-modern age, more and more countries are experiencing common challenges and opportunities. Nonetheless, countries like America, Britain, and Russia are trying to break free from this cycle by clinging to a nationalist model. It is important to highlight nationalistic sentiments' implications in a world where global travails are pressing issues. One of such global travails is ecological degradation. Our activities in the past 150 years have altered this planet's environmental balance, and our constant emission of greenhouse gases will inevitably end in catastrophe. Nations must come together to create an open channel with which technological excesses can be checked to prevent weaponization of machines. Humanity has continued to kill the planet in a myriad of ways. Take, for instance, our habit of pumping poisonous chemicals into the atmosphere, rivers, seas, lakes, and oceans, all in the name of inducing or sustaining growth. It is clear that these actions have led to the extinction of some plants, animals, and even entire ecosystems. Since this is a global problem, there's no doubt that a nationalistic solution is unsuitable. A country that chooses to implement policies that will drastically reduce ecological poisons generation, while others ignore the problem, will equally suffer the consequences. As such, a global response to this threat is the most viable approach. The same is true of the questions that disruptive technologies pose. Though automation and machine learning will optimize humanity, they will also introduce a new useless class, digital dictatorship and cyber war. In light of this, nations must join forces to establish a universal guideline for creating and implementing modern technologies. Chapter 5. The role of religion and immigration in the coming era is important to the growth of civilization. It is difficult to thoroughly discuss the woes of nationalism without touching on religion's role in the defragmentation of the one civilization concept. Religion has taken a back seat as a result of technological advancement in areas that it once prevailed upon. Now, people no longer go to priests, witch doctors, or rabbis when their health or crop fails. Instead, science is a viable option. However, nationalists have found that religion is a useful institution in the race for nationalism. So long society hinges on cooperation, and cooperation relies on well-told myths. It is common for nationalists to elevate a religion or fabricate a new one that will inspire patriotism. We see this manifest in Japan in the 1850s. Where the remodeled Shinto religion taught various doctrines that inspired loyalty to the state. In the modern world, Islamist states use doctrines in the Quran to back their policies. The nationalism strategy is born out of the realization that religion and race are perhaps the only way people attempt to retain their identity in an increasingly globalized world. Religion has no solutions to the threats of nuclear annihilation, global warming, and disruptive technologies. Instead, it cements the principles of isolationism and stalls the values of liberalism. This notion is evident in the ongoing debate about Europe's immigration policies. Pro-immigrants argue that European countries are not doing enough to accept and assimilate immigrants into their society. On the other hand, anti-immigrants counter that immigrants are not trying their best to conform to their host nation's cultures. Pivotal to these arguments is the unavailability of specific clauses that would determine what immigrants must do to be regarded as tolerable and accepted as first-class citizens, and the duration of this probation. Besides, it is also crucial that host nations with clearly defined cultural identities realize that it is almost impossible for absorbed immigrants to dilute their heritage. In the end, Europe's ability to resolve this challenge would leave a mark on the liberal movement and determine our chances against the colossal impediments of globalization. Chapter 6. Terrorism, War, Humility, God, and Secularism are possible triggers for a third world war. Terrorism continues to command fear and unwise responses from developed countries. The level of spectacle that this topic attracts has placed it above even the more frightening social vices that kill people in the millions. In the modern world, nations put the fight against terrorism above more critical conversation about the adverse effects of sugar or air pollution. Such is the level of this spectacle that the mere fear of a weak army has motivated elite societies to invade civilizations. Therefore, the author asserts that the mind games of terrorists are effective, as established armies are reeking with fear while empowering the enemy to recruit more soldiers and raise more funds. Here, Yuval Harari advises that countries battling terrorism should take a calmer approach to eradicate this scourge by abandoning brute force for covert actions. In addition to intelligently unrooting terrorist networks, governments must find a way to curtail the public spectacle that terrorism badly needs to make a mark. This strategy might require that the media should stop obsessively reporting on terror attacks. This generation's success in the fight against terrorism will determine the fate of the future against significant threats like nuclear terrorism, bioterrorism, and cyberterrorism. Chapter 7. A bigger threat to our existence is the possibility of a full-blown Third World War. Although modern society has enjoyed stability and peace, especially when compared to human history, some people believe that the surge of nationalistic views could ignite a war. While there are good enough reasons to believe this, it is unlikely that a society entrenched in economic growth will sacrifice peace to straighten out differences in political values. An analysis of recent wars and conflicts clarifies that nations are not as adept at waging successful wars as their medieval ancestors. And even if success was guaranteed, what would these nations profit from war? It is tough to imagine that China, with a $21 trillion GDP, would risk economic stabilization to seize a meager $1 billion worth of territory. Regardless of these notions, it is naive to bank on humans' rationality when analyzing the possibility of war. Taught us, you can never rule out human stupidity. Perhaps the only way to curb our stupidity is to teach humility. But how do you teach humility to people that have a burning inspiration to tell whoever cares to listen that their history, culture, God or gods, and nationality is superior? The intolerance that stems from such a superiority complex is the real threat that humanity needs to conquer. The belief of one religion that it should dominate is negative thinking that can lead to a full-blown war if not monitored. More frightening is monotheism that suggests that the bedrock of today's society was built around the model that there is only one God. And so whoever objects to this doctrine does not deserve acceptance. What difference does it make to the dead, the orphans, and the homeless, whether the mad destruction is wrought under the name of totalitarianism or in the holy name of liberty or democracy? Mahatma Gandhi. Chapter 8. It is difficult to decipher the truth, since an individual human is not as knowledgeable as he thinks he is. You can never get a full picture of events on your own without borrowing one or two elements from other people. This phenomenon is what the author calls group thinking or knowledge illusion, and it has helped humanity lay the foundation of the coming future. Even scientists are not immune to the power of groupthink. Thus, scientists who believe that facts can change public opinion may themselves be the victims of scientific groupthink. The scientific community believes in the efficacy of facts. Hence, those loyal to that community continue to believe that they can win public debates by throwing the right facts around, despite much empirical evidence to the contrary. However, one of the downsides of knowledge illusion is that it allows ignorant leaders to hide behind a social or party structure. Secondly, group thinking is so powerful that it is almost impossible to change its views. In other words, it is difficult to enlighten people relying on group knowledge, even if you show them facts that prove their views wrong. This task's futility begs the question, how will a social species entrenched in knowledge illusion differentiate between good and bad, or justice and injustice? Once you acknowledge that your knowledge about how the world works is flawed, it is only normal for you to doubt your moral code. It is hard to justify a moral compass when the truth is too complex to comprehend. We live in an increasingly expanding and interconnected world where the actions of an individual in China could directly affect the lives of thousands in Africa. Therefore, we could all hold ignorance as the culprit, or look for a system that would excavate the truth from the trenches of confusion. The truth is that the more you try to understand the workings of the world and chase the global truth, the greater your chances of becoming lost. Unlike the world society tends to paint us, the real world relies on fiction, and so you must ascertain and investigate the source of your information. Chapter 9. Ensuring the resilience of humanity is the only way to survive the future. Now that you have a blurry idea of what the near future holds, you must get prepared for the torrid and unfamiliar reality that humanity is about to step into. More importantly, it is imperative to alter the education system that has served us all these years for a more flexible one. Today's system does not have the right tools and models to mold people that can survive the volatile terrain of the not-too-distant future. This era promises to introduce disruptions at a rate that we have never seen before. As such, the average individual must continue to change and reinvent himself to avoid being irrelevant. To put it simply, you need to teach yourself how to remain resilient in the face of the unknown. Unfortunately, the current system is not equipped to do this. Therefore, the author advises that you must strive to understand yourself, just as corporations and governments use technology to analyze your thoughts and hack them. Once you have a firm grip on who you are, it becomes easy to evade manipulations and withstand change. In your quest to find meaning in your existence, it is vital to discard fiction borrowed from religion, nationalism, liberalism, and culture. You will never find meaning in a well-oiled legend, story, or ideology. For Yuval Noah Harari, he found meaning when he took the time to assess his mind through meditation objectively. He found out that the mind is a chaotic scene that is beyond our control, and our feelings and outlook on the world are not a result of extrinsic factors, but an intrinsic balance in our mind. Realizing this truth will help you see situations from the right perspective, which is the viable way of tackling problems and evading mind hacks. Conclusion. Truth is stranger than fiction, but it is because fiction is obliged to stick to possibilities. Truth isn't. Mark Twain. It is still a mystery to many as to how drastic the world will likely change in the next 30 years. Some have predicted a complete overhaul of current religion, government, and education systems. However, if an overhaul is inevitable, it should bother you that humanity has not found suitable models to replace these aging systems. As such, you will have to undergo a systemic reinvention that would match the rate of disruptions that tomorrow brings. Your ability to achieve this will determine your relevance in the coming years. Understanding the workings of your mind will help you prepare for what is coming. It will help you retain power over your choices and actions in a world where machines and governments constantly look for ways to plant thoughts into people's minds. It is advised that you seek viable methods of finding meaning in your existence. Therefore, when you fail to achieve your goal, it is not this truth that induces disappointment. It is the biochemical reactions in our brains that generate feelings. Similarly, when people ridicule your faith, culture, or ideas, it is the mind that translates these events into feelings. Try this. It is plausible that the education system would not do much to prepare you for the world that lies ahead. Therefore, it is your responsibility to nurture the resilience needed to adapt to constant change and live a fulfilling life. Support global climate change policies such as renewable energy, use of less fossils, and forestation.